Welcome to Better Life, Better Business, your go-to podcast for how you can grow your business, double your productivity and time off, work smarter and not harder. Brought to you by local business coaching expert Christoph Nauer, CEO of Balance 6 in Walnut Creek, California.
Welcome back to Better Life, Better Business with local business coach and time management expert Christoph Nauer of Balance 6. I'm your host, Rebecca Troxel, founder and CEO of Rebecca's Vault. Continuing right along with our series where Christoph talks with business owners about not only what they can do to help you with time in your business, but how they're navigating the world of being business owners themselves.
Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everyone. I'm Christoph Nauer of Balance 6, and today I'm going to be talking with Brady Helkenn with BH Tech Connections, IT Consulting, and Computer Networking. Hi, Brady. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Christoph. Good to be here.
Wonderful. So great to have you. As you know, and as our listeners probably know by now, the purpose of my podcast is really to provide excellent resources, helpful tools, and tips to business owners. And that's exactly why I invited you to be a guest today, Brady. Can you please tell us a little bit of what it is you do and how you bring value to business owners and entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So I work predominantly with smaller businesses, solopreneurs and freelancers, even some non-business related individuals in some cases, and then small businesses up to maybe 10 computers max. And we provide IT services. It's something that there's plenty of IT service companies, but they'll all have minimum sizes that they require before they'll work with those companies. And so there's a wide range of companies across the country that are well under 10 that don't have access to that kind of support, that kind of infrastructure. So we bridge that gap.
Well, that's fantastic. And that's really one of the reasons I felt attracted to you and wanted you to be on this podcast, because you are so different from all the other IT companies that I do know. And you also, obviously, it's a perfect fit for my clients because my clients fall into this category as well. So what's one thing that you wish you had known when you began your business?
I had been thinking about that all day. I think for me, it boiled down to, I wish I had found my why sooner. So when I had launched my business, I'd been working with individuals and small businesses, and I enjoyed doing it, but I couldn't put my finger on why I didn't want to go and pick up a bigger client. And it took a while for me to start saying I didn't want to pick up the other clients because they had options. And then it took a while for that to evolve into me actually having a mission statement around the business, about having that be a specific drive and vision for the company to provide that gap in coverage to this demographic, right? So I got there. It's just as polished as I am now about knowing who I serve and why I do it. I did not have that level of detail starting out. I wish I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's becoming you clear on your USP, your unique selling proposition, your ideal client. Yes. And you're probably not alone. I would imagine a lot of business owners took a while for them to figure that out, including myself. There you go. Brady, what's your biggest challenge right now?
Biggest challenge for me right now is figuring out how to transfer the fingerprint that has always been me into something that works in a system with other staff, right? And being able to hand over hats or roles to various people on board or to various vendors has always been a particular challenge. I've always had an issue with delegating something completely. I can delegate something, but then I would end up wanting to stick my fingers in there anyway and muddle around with it. So for me, lately, the struggle has been that I'm finally actually letting go, and I'm almost going through that withdrawal of Like I'm actually for once not interrupting and getting in the way of the process. And it is such a bizarre feeling.
Yes. Well, it's great. You actually already tapped on into our next question I was going to ask you. So I'm going to skip one and go to the one about delegating. What role does delegating play in your business? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, used to be, and COVID actually was the final nail in this coffin. Used to be, I was involved in the day-to-day support with our clients. Like I would have people on board, and they would, I would have employees that could go out on site, and I would have certain employees that could do certain, dashboard level administration and software installs and stuff like that. Things that felt like they were easy enough to hand over, but heavy duty consults I usually held on to too much. And certain like complicated tech jobs I would still take on for myself. I would have clients that had been around for years and like talking to me, and I'd do it. And I would be bouncing around all over the place, doing meetings and coffee shops and on-site visits, and then COVID happened and it all had to stop. And I already had some systems put in place for remote support should go to staff. And it just turned into, well, the complicated stuff is going to the same link. So I was almost forced by accident to finish coaching staff that I never taught how to do more complicated things, how to do them, because they're about to talk to the client in an hour and I need to let them know the context. So you do that repeatedly 15,000 times throughout the past year, and they now have already had the skill level, and I reached the point where I was able to start actually trusting that that skill was there. Because the enemy of delegation is that feeling of like, if you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself kind of thing.
Yep.
And so for my company, the role of delegation has taken on a completely different meaning for me in the past year, because it would have taken more effort for me to try and figure out how to stay involved than it did to just bring everybody up to speed and trust that it was going to work. Which is not, that's not usual, right? Usually it's more effort to train them up than it is to keep doing it yourself, which is why we refuse to delegate so often.
Yeah,
so.
right. And then the growth can happen, because there's only so much we can do. But what's natural is the discomfort, letting go of certain things and then trusting that the other person is actually going to do a good job, and that you hired the right people to do the job, so the whole trust plays a role into that.
Right. Well, Brady, if you have not seen some of our previous podcasts, Christoph and I talk a lot about prioritizing. I highly recommend you check those out. And same to our viewers if you haven't seen those. We have discussed previously the 80-20 rule, the ABCDE method, proactive procrastination. There's all kinds of methods. What do you use in your business to prioritize?
I do focus on the 80-20 rule. I do use that rather often. I also look, I don't necessarily have names for them, but I look, I think of it in terms of like, I look for levers to pull rather than having one-on-one conversations. I look for opportunities to have a one-to-many kind of conversation where I talk with a partner, like Christoph and I have talked before this podcast in much that way, where, he mentioned, a lot of his clients are in the right size, and we've talked about that a bit too. And I look for those kind of conversations. I look for those kind of pairings. Our business is like referral generation based, so we get a lot of referrals for most of our incoming business. And one of our main efforts that we're going through right now is shifting into a national landscape, where we started off in San Francisco, we kind of extended out to the Bay Area, and about a year and a half ago, made the decision that we were going to become a national company. There was no reason to restrict the borders. And then COVID happened, and it really drove that point home, that really there's no reason why we need to be doing on-site. We functioned for over a year now with having maybe 4 or 5 on-sites during the entire year. Like, it really wasn't a whole lot going on there. So with all of that in mind, my efforts are along the lines of, it's going to be a really long road ahead of us to grow clients if all I'm doing is having one-on-one conversations every single time with every single possible client. And right, so my efficiency, the 80-20 rule, and then what I kind of apply my logic to beyond that is figuring out how one conversation will pull the weight of 50 independent conversations could have.
Yeah.
Good. Well, as you know, you have lots of responsibility as a business owner. You're in charge and you have to make sure everything gets done. Not necessarily by yourself, but you have to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. How do you go about doing that?
Metrics. If you had asked me this 3 months ago, even, like, I would have been like, I don't know. That's a good question, Christoph. But in the past 3 months, I would say metrics. I've finally found some good tools that actually work, where we can actually plug in weekly metrics and some monthly metrics and stuff like that. Weekly meetings with my staff on a constant basis is another thing that is within the same past 3 month range where I finally started implementing that properly. So the only possible way I could stay on top of everything is to know what each person is kind of doing. Right now I've got 5 people that I manage, right? So it's possible right now for it to be a flat hierarchy where I'm the leader, and then there's 5 that I talk to one-on-one. As the company scales, I'll obviously have to figure out a way of having some level of management, supervisory midpoint in the middle, so that I can have a manageable number of meetings. But delegation also was almost impossible if I couldn't hold somebody to task for a certain metric by which I would judge whether they were doing it properly or not, or how well they were doing it. So yeah, there you go.
No, it sounds good. I mean, I'm always interested in learning what other entrepreneurs are doing and what they're using, you may or may not know that only about 3% of people have written goals for their business and their lives. You would imagine as an entrepreneur, you probably fall into the 3%. So how do you handle goal setting?
I picture where I want to be, where I feel like there I can rest, there I can relax and go, okay, I don't need to keep pushing so hard. I look at that as a goalpost, and then I just trace backwards. And so whether I'm setting that as a 10-year goal or a 5-year goal really boils down to my level of patience or lack thereof with the timeline. So, 10-year goal, I tend not to do very many 10-year goals because I don't even know where I'm going to be in 10 years. I mean, I've only been running my business for 6. Like, I haven't even been operating a business full time for 10 years, let alone know where I want it to be in 10 years. So I tend to ignore that. I usually do 5 or less as far as looking outward. So I'll set a 5-year goal and go, this is an effective sense where I could kind of be semi-retired within my own business. And then I just kind of trace it backwards and calculate out whatever metrics I would want to track, number of clients or annual revenue or things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, good. One of the 6 in my business name, Balance 6, is time. Do you have any tips or tricks for business owner in this regard?
Probably because we were already talking about delegation, it's the first place my mind went. Depending on where your company is and where you want it to end up, kind of helps determine what's the best way for you to free up your time. Like, if you're a solopreneur and you don't intend on hiring people ever, find a bookkeeper, find, a business coach, find folks that will help supplement things that you just don't want to do as vendors. But if you have like a team, then it's a bit more about how do you grow your team internally, give them something to strive for at the same time that you hand something of yours off to them and take a hat off your plate. The number of hats is going to be the thing that's causing you to lose all your time, lose all your sleep, trying to figure everything out yourself. So delegate, whether it's to a staff or to a vendor, it doesn't really matter. But that would really boil down to it. And the hardest part, from speaking from personal experience, one is the sense of like, you got to do something, you got to do it yourself kind of thing that you have to mentally get past. But the other piece of it is also that it takes more time initially to transition to the point where you have more time. So you have to get through a painful point of it getting actually a little worse before it gets better, like cleaning your room. It's gonna look worse halfway in the middle of actually cleaning your room than it did before you even started, and that's gonna be inevitable if you're gonna hand stuff over, because you don't want to abdicate. Nobody will do it. You need to do it in a way that it's done correctly, right? So that's what I would really suggest, is there's not really going to be a good time for you to suddenly have enough time to then delegate something to somebody else, because you're never going to have enough time to do it, right? You have to prioritize it. You have to move it up the priority list enough to forcibly free up some time for you to be able to breathe and look at other things.
I love it. That's exactly right. I mean, you're using those key words again, prioritizing and delegating. It's one of the things I recommended just to a client before this call. Put a little sticky note on your computer that says delegate. Look for ways that things that you can take off your plate and hand off to somebody else. That's the key, is because you can't do it all yourself. And then you talked about outsourcing things like doing your books or whatever. Those are all key components, because we are an expert in usually one or two areas, but not in all of them. And doing your own books is not really the best use of your time, because I'm not a bookkeeper, so I don't really understand bookkeeping. And as such, I will procrastinate on it, and it won't get done. And then once it has to get done, then it takes me much longer, and then I will probably make a lot of mistakes. So it's actually, we're losing time by doing that in more than one way.
Yeah.
So yes, it's really refreshing to hear that that's the same for you. And then the other thing you said is really fantastic. It takes time to bring the other person up to par. I don't have time for training my employees. Well, but if you don't train them, then they can't do the work you originally hired them to do. The whole idea of the chicken and the egg, what was here first? So they have to have a look to the future and what it is you want to accomplish.
I like that. What do you expect to change in the equation?
Right.
If you just make that statement and leave it at that. Like, you have staff, they don't know how to do something, you don't have time to train them. And there's almost that pause of, okay, so what's your solution? Because you leave that equation alone and nothing will change.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I do have to say, I am enjoying quite a bit how a lot of the conversation is revolving around people in your team and delegating, and really heavily leaning on those people resources. And another resource that I always like to ask about that has to do with people is, as you were starting your business, or even after you started your business, tell us about some of the people who have been the most influential to you.
Okay. My first business coach is one of the first ones that springs to mind. His name's Leo Manzione out here in California, and he and I have worked together for about 1.5 years. So he was definitely very influential. Another person that also is high up the list is the first IT referral partner that I had. He passed me clients when it was still a moonlighting thing, and I was working full time somewhere, and I would help individuals out of their home in the evenings or the weekends kind of thing. And so he and I have known each other for over 10 years, which says a lot for the fact that I've been in business for 6, right? So
Yep.
There, Alex Rader, that would be another formative one. And then there was a third person that I would want to give a shout out to, Pradnya Leitner. She was my mindset coach, which preceded by a few months my beginning to work with Leo Manzione, and that was a big impact. Figuring out where I actually wanted to go really helped drive the point home. The lessons that I then picked up from the more traditional business coaching of what's my unique selling proposition, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, if I didn't know what I even wanted, I wouldn't have been able to identify why I was helping other people. So there was kind of almost a sequence there where I had early help from somebody that would pass good clients to me in the beginning, and then I had my mindset kind of, I coached on that and went through a whole program with her, and then I was really well primed to actually do proper business coaching at that point. Because Christoph, I'm sure you can vouch for this. There's not that many people that are mentally ready to actually take on a coach. Like, you need to be ready for it. You need to mentally be there where you're like, yes, I want help and I will want to do the work necessary to actually get past where I am to where I want to go.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's true, and I think what you said about the mindset, that's so key. I mean, I would say 70 to 80%, it really is the mindset. Because if we think that, if we believe somehow that we're not good enough or not whatever, we have that inner voice that gives us all the reasons why we cannot do whatever it is, then we can't really break out of that, and we will not get the results that we're looking for. So the mindset has to be on par, has to be on the same level of the conscious mind, the things that we do, we want to accomplish. And the beauty is that 95% of everything we do is driven by the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And that can actually be reconditioned, so.
Well, and Pradnya did an exercise with me. It was eerie, the results of it, the output. Like you talk about, balance 6 and the idea of money and mindset, right? And how do you feel about money and how do you feel what you're worth, kind of thing. And she had me answer a couple of questions that felt completely disconnected from each other, like they had nothing to do with each other. And then had me write out how much I made for the past 3 years. And I could see the connections from doing the exercise and see that it was just flat. That even though the business was making more and more money, I was paying myself exactly the same no matter what. Like, it never ever changed. There was such a vivid, stark contrast there where, I valued, clearly my internal value system was, that's how much I'm worth.
Yep.
And that was eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say at this point, I'm sure our listeners are probably curious on how they can connect with you and learn more about you and find you if they need help with technology. So how can folks find you online, Brady?
I'm pretty easy to find by name, actually. Googling me will find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, which is where I'm most active. If you think about my social media presence, I'm mostly on LinkedIn. On there, people can reach me by email. Check out my website, bhtechconnection.com. I network in BNI, I network in Provisors, and a couple of other random affinity groups that are a bit more local here to the Bay Area. But yeah, I'm easy enough to find. Come find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Brady, for letting our viewers and myself, by the way, listen in on your conversation with Christoph today.
Of course, my pleasure.
And if you, to our audience, if you or someone you know would like some help and guidance on having clarity and focus in your business like Brady has, make sure you check out Christoph's website, balance6.biz. There, you can learn more about Christoph and get his free report, 5 Secrets for Putting Your Business Growth on Autopilot. Thank you for coming back and joining us. And until next time, keep working on prioritizing and delegating like Brady and have a better life and a better business.
This week's episode of Better Life, Better Business is brought to you by CA&C Video Productions. Since 1985, CA&C Video has been providing live streaming, event production, and analog to digital transfer services. They capture those life-changing moments, preserving your history for current and future generations. Because your history matters. Visit their website at cacvideo.com. Thank you so much for your sponsorship.
That's all for now. Thanks for listening to another episode of Better Life, Better Business with business and time management coach Christoph Nauer with Balance 6, the leading business and time management company in Northern California. Visit them at balance6.biz.